All right, everybody. So here we are for episode 80 of Now Showing with Mike and Wayne. That's right, 80 episodes. We've been sitting here talking movies. We appreciate every single one of you that's listened to all of our episodes. Maybe there's only 3 of you, but we appreciate you. It's fun doing these every week. This week, to kind of tie in with one of our reviews, we're going to do like period dramas, period pieces. Doesn't have to be drama, action, whatever. But there's so many, different movies that fall into this category. I think people don't realize that period dramas period films just doesn't cover costume dramas. It covers, war films. It covers anything that was, like something like Dazed and Confused, something that was made, 10 to 20 years after it had already happened. Then it becomes a period film. So we're going to get into it here. I'm going to start off this week. I'm going to kind of go in I'm going to go with a costume drama, and then I'm going to go with more of a war movie, or like in this case, a boat movie, which I really like boat movies. And then I'm going to go into like a horror film. So
I'm just going to pick random stuff that I liked.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There's that too. So the first one I'm going to start off with, which is one I think it's incredibly well acted. It's incredibly well directed. It looks beautiful. It's an amazing film. It's a historical period piece. It is called Elizabeth, and it stars the wonderful Cate Blanchett, Academy Award winner for The Aviator. She was nominated for this movie. She played Elizabeth twice, because then there was the sequel, Elizabeth: The Golden Age. Both movies I thought were very well done. But the first one specifically is just kind of like a period drama masterpiece, something that you watch and you're taken to that, transported to that time, if you will. You get all the beautiful costumes and just the great rich characters and everything that she had to go through to be the queen. Back in that time, it was obviously even less likely that we would have a female ruler. And so for her to have to endure what she had to endure and not have a husband through the whole process and just basically be different, it was something she had to fight over in that time. And I think these movies do a good job of showing what it was like to be a woman in that period. Obviously, we don't really know because we didn't have cameras back then. But yeah, I've always been a big fan of this movie. I've always been a huge Cate Blanchett fan. We've talked about her before. She's an incredible actor. So this is just one of those movies I always really like to watch. I like to go back to. And it's just really well done. So, I mean, if you haven't seen Elizabeth or the sequel, I do highly recommend it. They're both two well-made movies. I can't find my words this morning.
I always grouped
that would be my first choice. Go ahead, man.
Gotcha. I always grouped the Elizabeth movies in with like a Little Women and a Pride and Prejudice type of thing. Not saying that they're on par with those masterpieces. They're in the same ballpark. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not going to sit here. I don't want to argue semantics about, well, which one is better? How dare you put them in that category? It's like, you know what? They're all reasonably similar. They're all, similarly or made to the same expectation, I think is the best way to put it. So that's where I just kind of always link those movies in there. Very much, you got to be in the mood for that specific type of art.
Yeah, they're all very feminist dramas too. So all about the power of women. At a time where at those times, when the movies take place, it was not a thing that people talked about. So I think that it was definitely interesting to have those stories because the Little Women and Pride and Prejudice are works of literature that were written in that time. So there were women having these thoughts back then about, what it would be like if, we could be wittier, we could be more sarcastic and kind of
what if we were actually treated like human beings?
Yeah, exactly. What if we were treated like men? And that, so I think all those movies you talk about that's definitely, they fit in that category for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Wayne. So what's your first pick for the week?
All right, I am going to go with one of my guiltiest pleasures. Guiltiest pleasures. It's what I like, and if anybody doesn't like it, they can deal with it. I'm going with 1994's Legends of the Fall. Now I know I've mentioned this before. Written by Edward Zwick. I'm sorry, directed by Edward Zwick, written by Susan Shilliday, William D. Whitliff, and the novella is developed by Jim Harrison. All right, we are talking Brad Pitt, Anthony Hopkins, Aidan Quinn, Julia Ormond.
Great
Down
cast.
here, yes. Kenneth Welsh is I'm sorry, is in it as well. Tantu Cardinal, Karina Lombard. So we're talking about Montana around before and during World War One and the early 1900s, basically. In the early 20th, in the earliest, earliest, in early 20th century Montana, wow.
Words are not
Not
our
only can
strong
I
suit
not read,
today.
I cannot. I might be stroking out, so stay tuned, everybody, in case I have the big one. In early 20th century Montana, Colonel William Ludlow, played by Sir Anthony Hopkins, lives in the wilderness with his sons Tristan, Brad Pitt, Alfred, Aidan Quinn, and Samuel, Henry Thomas. Eventually, the unconventional but close-knit family encounters tragedy when Samuel is killed in World War One. Tristan and Alfred survive their tours of duty, but soon after they return home. Both men fall for Samuel's gorgeous fiancée, Susanna, played by Julia Ormond. Uh, Real quick breakdown of the synopsis. Brad Pitt's character Tristan is there when his brother Samuel is killed. So, they don't address it, but obviously major PTSD, major issues there. And what is so compelling about this early 20th century piece, this wilderness frontier piece, is just how much they focus on how the character's growth. I've always appreciated Brad Pitt and how he's the wild man who goes on adventures, but somehow is able to find himself, come back, and lead I guess what you would call a normal life. Whereas the Alfred character, played by Aidan Quinn, has always kind of been unsatisfied, if you will, with his life in the sense where, he ends up marrying Susanna, but she doesn't really love him, and that whole deal. Just the way this life is encapsulated in the early in the early 20th century, and just the wilderness and how civilization, quote unquote, if you will, kind of moves in and changes everybody's way of life. And it kind of mirrors the way the United States kind of treated the Native Americans and how they were kind of just ushered into one spot and then kind of pushed around and pushed away. A lot of symbolism in this film. It's just fantastic. Yeah, sir. Do you have any recollections of this film?
It's been a long time since I've seen it. The main thing I remember about it is Brad Pitt's long flowing hair. I think that this is back at the time where he definitely became a sex symbol, and this was one of those movies that did it, I believe. So that's mainly my main recollection of it. I do remember liking it, but I haven't seen it in quite some time to really comment on the quality of it or if it still holds up or not. But I do recommend, again, the movies we talk about are movies we think people should go watch. So if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a while and you didn't care for it when you first saw it, maybe watch it again. You never know how your feelings over film change. Your feelings on film change over time. So you never know. So check it out.
Yes, don't judge it on my baseless ramblings there. It is a fantastic film.
So my next one is another one I think similarly, like a lot of people don't talk about that much anymore, but when it came out, it was an epic. It was well reviewed. I believe it got a bunch of, or maybe not a bunch, but some Academy Award nominations. And I saw this thing in theaters back when I was only like 22, maybe, or no, 20. Sorry, I can't do math. When I was 20 years old. And it was just one of those movies. It's called Master and Commander: Far Side of the World. It stars Russell Crowe, directed by Peter Weir. Paul Bettany is also in it with him. They are the two main characters. It's a group of men on a boat, and they basically it's a survival film. And these are the type of, I'm always kind of drawn to these ocean type films. I don't like being in the ocean. I don't really like being on boats, but when it comes to being watching a movie about it, I find it very enthralling. like Black Sea with Jude Law is another more recent one. The one with Chris Hemsworth, where the true story of Moby Dick. I forget, it's like in the heart of the sea, I think. I like that one, and that one didn't really get great reviews.
You just like saying, I'm the captain now.
Yes, yeah. There's another one, Captain Phelps. So this one takes during the Napoleonic Wars, Captain Jack Aubrey, played by Russell Crowe, of HMS Surprise, is ordered to intercept the heavy frigate Acheron, a French privateer. Acheron ambushes Surprise off the coast of Brazil, causing heavy damage while remaining undamaged by the British guns. The ship's boats tow Surprise into a fog bank to evade pursuit. Aubrey's officers tell him that the Surprise is no match for Archeon and that they should abandon the chase. So basically, the men want him to just abandon, leave, give up, and he does not want to stop fighting. So it's kind of he's wrestling with his own men. He's wrestling with himself on what he should do, what's the best course. The men just want to live. It's a really just gripping film. It's really shot extremely well. The editing, the music, the acting, everybody is just on par on this movie. It's one of those films I saw, almost 20 years ago now, and it was just incredible. Like, just to see it in theater. It's long too, but to see it in theaters and to see something like that so epic on the big screen was pretty incredible. It's just one of those films I think a lot of people don't talk about that much anymore. Maybe because it didn't make a lot of money or anything, but it's just this great big movie, and everybody was fantastic in it. I'm going to go through the cast list because there were a few more people other than Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany. They were just the two leads. Let's see here. James Darcy. There's got to be other people that I remember. He's the only other person so far. Joseph Morgan, who was from the Vampire Diaries. So if people have seen that or the originals, he's Klaus. So yeah, there weren't a lot of other actors, and I thought there were more actors that were like the side characters. But James Darcy, you'd recognize him if you looked him up, and also Morgan as well. There's other British actors, so you probably recognize those guys too. But yeah, it's really just one of those fantastic films that I kind of think, to me, is probably one of the best films from that decade. And again, I just feel like people don't talk about it a lot. So, nor do I watch it enough. I need to watch it more. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's definitely a great movie. If you haven't seen it, if you see it floating around out there, check it out for sure. All right, Wayne, what's your second one?
All right, I am sticking with the Russell Crowe theme, and I am going with 2000's Best Picture, Gladiator. A former Roman general sets out to exact vengeance against the corrupt emperor who murdered his family and sent him to slavery. Russell Crowe stars as Maximus Decimus Meridius. He was the commander of the armies of the North, general of the Phoenix Legions, loyal servant to the true emperor, Albus Dumbledore. Marcus Aurelius, played by the great Richard Harris. Father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next. He is supported by Joaquin Phoenix as Commodus, the new emperor and son to Marcus Aurelius. We've got Connie Nielsen, Oliver Reed, Derek Jacobi, David Schofield, Jijman Hansu.
Yeah, I believe it's how you say it.
Obviously, I need to mention Tommy Flanagan, who plays Cicero. Obviously, Chibs on Sons of Anarchy. I always got to throw my favorites some love. What can we say about this masterpiece that has not already been said? It is fantastic. It is inspiring. The cinematography, the score, the editing, just a great movie to kick off the new millennium.
Yeah, it's
Russell
a
Crowe
top-notch
is
film.
fantastic in it. First of all, do you like this film, sir?
Yes, I do. I'm a big fan.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Do you have any moments what's your favorite part in this film? Because I'm going to share mine after you're done, and it's not anything anybody's going to be like, what? after we get done.
I mean, okay, well, so just because it sounds like you're not going to bring that part up, but are you not entertained? That whole scene in the film. I mean, I think that's what everybody remembers, right? That's that epic moment that's still used to this day. People use it during sports broadcasts and fights. And are you not entertained? I mean, it's an epic moment, and it's the call out to the crowd, like, this is what you wanted. You wanted this death and this mayhem, and I'm gonna fucking give it to you. And that's it's just this. I don't know, the whole moment of that movie the whole movie kind of comes to a head at that moment, and I think it's just a perfect moment. And Russell Crowe delivered it spectacularly. I do want to mention before you get to your moment too. What's interesting is that we know Richard Harris died during the making of the Harry Potter films, but Oliver Reed died during the making of this film. So 2 films very close to each other that had a lead actor pass away. They had to finish the film without him. In the case of Richard Harris, obviously he was recast because they did like 7 more movies. So this is this movie, it's just an epic film, and that scene I think really encapsulates the whole film, and it really is just a great moment. But I'm interested in what your favorite scene is.
The sequence after he's taken into slavery, where he's got the wound on his arm, and the gentleman whose name I can't pronounce properly, I apologize again, is putting like the shit in his arm, the maggots or whatever, to clean the wound. That whole editing sequence, that scene with like the effects of the sun and him going in and out of consciousness, it was so encapsulating for me, and just like, what the fuck is going on? Holy crap. And then of course that leads into the gladiator battles, and he does the thing with the dirt in his hands, and I just, that transitionary like scene, and it's not very long, it's maybe a couple minutes if that, it's just like making transitions, like, it's not just a dissolve anymore, folks, or a hard cut. So, showing the lapse of time and the wound healing, but
I also really like the scenes where he sees his wife and kid. Like, those are I think done really, really well. Very emotional scenes. Joaquin Phoenix, I think, is fantastic in this movie. Does not get enough love.
Mm-hmm. That's another great.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. There's another great quote by Russell Crowe when he's telling him about how if you find yourself riding in green fields, you're in Elysium and you're already dead. So I don't know. I don't encapsulate the quote, but
the Russell Crowe-ness of it all. I think too, this is what turned Joaquin Phoenix against award shows, because he saw everybody from Gladiator winning Oscars that year, and he did not win. And so I think he was like, wait, what? Everybody else won, but I didn't win. So at that point was the moment where he's like, well, fuck award shows.
I will definitely agree that he, out of everybody, should have won, and I think his performance was the best in the film. So, sorry, fight me.
No, well, and it's difficult because we talked about this before. Like, he's a slave owner. He's not a good person. So we always kind of wonder, is it difficult to give those people the Oscar, like we talked about with Fassbender in 12 Years a Slave? Like, you give the guy who plays the grisly, disgusting slave owner the Oscar, or you give it to the nice person who maybe died in their movie, but they were a really good person. So it's like up in the air. Like, what do you do?
This is why we need to separate, film and the art from the actual person.
Right, exactly. And I think it's just hard for them to do sometimes. But yeah, you're right, sure.
I'm going to take this a hard left for a second. Again, with issues, not being able to separate the actor from the character they're portraying. The gentleman that played Bryce on 13 Reasons Why, they actually had to do a message saying, he is not the character that he is portraying. Stop writing him hate mail and spitting on him when you see him in the streets. It's like, and again, just that whole aspect of like, yes, they played a fantastic villain. Be able to separate yourself from the actor from the character.
Well, Lena Headey with Game of Thrones. I mean, she had to deal with that all the time. People spitting at her, telling her she was an awful person. She's like, you guys,
children being scared of her.
Yes.
It's like, well, why is your children watching Game of Thrones first and foremost?
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, so I'm going to move on to my last one here. This one came out in 2018. It is a horror film, and it's a war film, so a war horror film. Uh, I really enjoyed it when I saw it. It's called Overlord. It is basically during World War II. Team of American soldiers are going into Germany, and they end up uncovering a Nazi area, occupied area, where they are basically turning people into zombies. And it's this big, epic looking, just war film, blood, guts, just massacre, but all zombie shit. And it's really badass. The opening of the scene is awesome as the soldiers are like parachuting in, and then they just like it's all just so crazy. And it stars Jovan Adepo, Wyatt Russell, Kurt Russell, and Goldie Hawn's kid, Matilda Olivier, John Magaro, who we saw in Saints of Newark, the Many Saints of Newark, Palau Aspesk from Game of Thrones, Bokeem Woodbine, and I&D Caresticker. It's a lot of British actors, a lot of American. It's like a mix between British and American actors. Directed by Julius Avery, written by Billy Ray and Mark L. Smith. It's just badass, man. It's a crazy film. If you haven't seen it, and you really like zombie movies, I highly recommend it. There's just lots of cool things. It looks fantastic. There's a great kid like underground cultish type things going on, Nazi zombies. What else do you need? I mean, it's this epic movie.
Remind everybody what the name of this is again.
It's called Overlord, which
Overlord,
doesn't really.
okay.
It's not maybe the best title for it because it's kind of confusing when it doesn't explain anything that the movie's about really. But when you watch it, you kind of understand where they're going with that. It kind of reminds me. It would be like a really cool video game, but it would also be cool if they made like a sequel too. Wyatt Russell's badass in this movie. It's just it's really well done, and it's one of those movies I think people just weren't expecting when it came out if it was going to be good or not because zombies, World War II, what is that going to look like? The answer is amazing and a hell of a lot of fun. So if you haven't seen Overlord, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's usually streaming somewhere, I think. So I definitely would go seek that one out if you don't mind blood and guts and zombies. So that's my three. I'll do some more recs at the end when Wayne is done with his last film.
I have 4 that I want to choose from, but I think I'm going to pick the one that segues nicely into one of our reviews of the week, and that is 1993's Schindler's List. Now, we have spoken of Schindler's List before, but again, when we're talking about time periods, I don't think there's a movie that does it better than this film directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Thomas Keneally, and screenplay done by Steven Zillian. It stars Liam Neeson as Oskar Schindler, Ralph Fiennes as Eamon Goeth, Ben Kingsley, Carolyn Goodall, Jonathan Segal. I'm not going to go through the whole cast list, but yeah, when we watch films, we want to be entertained, and I struggle with saying that this is an entertaining film to watch. I would say this is almost more of it's a slash movie, not a slasher. It's an entertainment slash educational piece because, we learned about what happened in Germany and in Europe, what the Nazis did during the Holocaust, but to really see something like this in a major motion picture is just something that I don't know about you, but I will never forget it. I mean, we got to watch this in high school over like a 2-day period where we just, we sat and we watched it in parts and we discussed what was happening and what is part of history. And, it's just, there's just things that obviously you remember the girl, they highlight the girl in the pink dress or the pink jacket, red jacket. But the other one that sticks out is just when they're burning, the bodies, and there's just the soldier screaming just mercilessly, like intensely, just like images like that, are burned into my memory, if you will. Um, Obviously, Liam Neeson's performance in this is unforgettable in my opinion. Just like the character growth again, just the change, and just how the movie how his last scene ends, if you will. So I chose this one as my last one because you're obviously going to be talking about another movie from this time period. I thought it would be a
Yeah,
nice little segue, if you
it's
will.
yes, no, and Schindler's List. I mean, yeah, we've talked about it a couple times now. It's an epic movie, man. It's like you said, we've talked about before. It's hard to watch. Great performances from Neeson and Ray Fiennes. Ray Fiennes is the villain. Sir Ben Kingsley's in it too, right?
Yes.
I'm not misremembering that. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
mean, you
he's
have a great
the bookkeeper or
yeah.
the accountant.
You have a great
Isaac
cast.
Stern.
Yes. One of the great Hollywood directors of all time working behind it. And this is like his opus, his masterpiece, his love letter to his people,
Mm-hmm.
because as a Jewish director, like this is something I think that he longed to make for a long time. And for him to get to do that, um, I think was awesome. And the fact that it still kind of resonates with what's going on today and with some people in history and what they're trying to do to our own country.
Yeah.
So it's crazy that we can watch these movies from like that are about World War II or a different time, and they feel so relevant to today. And I
Well,
think what the movie we're going to review does that very well.
right. I was going to bring that up about how art imitates life, and how people can be led astray by propaganda, and
Yep.
it's happening right now again, unfortunately. And
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like it's always going to happen, right? Like you think we would have beaten it at some point, but it just seems like people are always susceptible to sheep and or wolves in sheep clothing. I guess I don't know, wolves in
well,
wolves
I do
clothing.
my own
I don't know.
research, so.
Yeah,
But of course, I'm only going to look up stuff that I agree with, and then it falls
yeah.
in line with what
I would
my
argue that
closed-minded thoughts are.
these people that are able to convince these people aren't very good at hiding who they are. People just don't want to see who they are.
Right.
They're not really uh, wolves in sheep clothing or sheep in wolves clothing, whatever the saying is, um, because they're pieces of shit already. And
It's all
and
about
I
being
would argue
enabled.
the way that Hitler is described in the movie we're going to review coming up, they kind of make that same argument that everybody already knew he was awful. It's just certain people didn't want to see it. All right, so a couple other ones I would recommend. One I was going to maybe talk about other than Master Commander was The Patriot with Mel Gibson. I know that movie kind of got blasted critically, but I really like that movie a lot. I enjoy watching it. Uh,
Absolutely fantastic film.
Heath Ledger's in it, so it's another bonus. Pride and Prejudice, that's one of my wife's favorite films. So if you guys like period dramas, watch that one for sure. What was another one? I'm trying to think.
While you
Obviously
think,
stuff
I
like
wanted
Saving
to.
Private Ryan, Dazed and Confused, Everybody Wants Some, another Richard Linklater one. That's a baseball movie.
Yeah,
So any, we
I've
like
got
it. We've talked enough. Sorry, go ahead.
I've got Braveheart on my list still, Gangs of New York, and Dances with Wolves as
Yep,
the three I wanted to make sure that we mentioned.
yep. Dancing with Wolves, one of my wife's favorite as well. She loves that one.
Yep.
All right, so we are going to move on to our reviews
Of the week.
There we go. Feel like we haven't had that excitement behind it in a while.
He's back.
So the first one up is Munich: The Edge of War. It's a Netflix original, directed by Christian Schwalkow, written by Ben Power, starring Jeremy Irons, George McKay, Janice Newwohner, August Deal. He's a German actor that's been in a lot of stuff I've seen. It is based on the book Munich by Robert Harris. The novel is kind of like a fictionalized history of what had happened before we got into World War II. So while there is historical fact in this film, the main kind of spy story is not necessarily like fiction, like nonfiction. So they did, obviously in the book they took a lot of leeway, so they do that in the movie too. But they, there is enough history here. I think that they hit on that for history buffs. It'll work as well. The main plot is that we start in 1932. That's with three friends that we see. The cast is George McKay plays the main character. Let's see. So it's George McKay, Janice Newvoner, and Liv Lisa Fries. Those are the three people we see in the beginning. They're friends. They just graduated college. They're at some like a graduation party or wedding. It's not clear. Then we go 6 years later, and in 1932, sorry, the Paul character, who is a German, is very much like, oh, Hitler gets us. He's gonna change the world type of response when they talk about Germany. Fast forward 6 years later, and George McKay's character, Hugh Leggett, is now working for the government as a secretary to the prime minister, played by Jeremy Irons. And the prime minister is a real person, Neville Chamberlain. Another big change historically is apparently Neville Chamberlain was kind of a loser. No one really liked him. In this movie, they kind of changed it a little bit. They does some things that are still very questionable, but they do kind of make him somewhat, I think, more of a stronger person.
Right.
So Hugh and Paul are on opposite sides. You got Paul's in Germany, Hugh's in England, but now Paul has changed. Paul is working with the resistance to stop Hitler before Hitler can get started. And Hugh is basically trying to move up in the government and be as close to the prime minister as possible, kind of like be his right hand. And him and Paul end up kind of being spies in a way where they have to like exchange information to help take down Hitler. Paul is all ready for it. Hugh is kind of thrusted into the moment, into the spotlight. We find out later in the movie why Paul has changed his stance on the Nazis, and now why he wants to fight against them. Because the whole movie was like, why? They haven't given us a reason yet, but they do later on. So if anyone is watching the movie and they're like, what's going on? Just wait. It'll happen.
It's very intense, very anxiety-inducing.
It's for a movie that doesn't have a lot of action or anything, it's a very intense film. I thought it was a pretty good spy movie. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I was entertained by it. I felt the tension between all the characters and the scenes, and I thought Jeremy Irons was very good. But yeah, I think it's if you are into these type of stories, it's definitely for you. Like if you like Bridge of Spies, which is one I really like with Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. Now I would argue a much better movie, but it's in that realm. And I would say watch this movie if you like those type of movies. It's a really good like spy thriller. Wayne, what are your thoughts?
It's hard for me to say I enjoy these types of movies, just with what is surrounding and what's going on, and like when they're walking through the streets and you're seeing the stores that are owned by people of Jewish people, and how they're marked and tagged, if you will, and it's just it's hard to just get caught up in those feelings of both anger and depression. But you were spot on with it. It's very, like I was saying, it's very much a niche type film where you got to be in a certain mindset and mood for it.
For sure.
If you're looking for action and excitement, no, probably going to choose something else this time. But if you're really in the mood for espionage, this hits a lot of the buttons. So
I think too, we live in a time where everyone thinks spy movies, they think James Bond. When James Bond are just giant big action films about a spy. Where if you watch like a typical spy thriller, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is one. Bridge of Spies, like I mentioned, like those are very taut thrillers that like you have to kind of be patient, and you're going to get a big payoff at the end. And this one, I would argue, has that. But I also, it's a war movie, but it's also kind of a pre-war movie because it's before World War II starts. That's why it's called Munich, the Edge of War, because it's right at that cusp. It's the year before World War II really began. So it was basically about the men and women that were trying to stop World War II from happening. Right. So yeah, it's a solid flick. I think if this type of spy thriller is your bag, you will enjoy it. I would give it a 7 out of 10. I definitely enjoyed it. I don't know that I'll be going back to watch it again, but it was a good, well-made movie, I thought. Wayne, what is your rating?
Yeah, I'll give it a 7. It's not something I'm going to seek out that I can see myself doing, but if I'm on a binge of espionage type things, I might reach for this third or fourth one in line.
Yeah,
If
gotcha.
it's Spy Week, if you will.
Good old Spy Week.
Yeah.
All right. So our next one is let's see. It competed for the Palme d'Or in 2021 Cannes Film Festival. It won the Grand Prix. It is the Iranian entry for the best international feature film this year at the 94th Academy Awards. It is called A Hero, and it is on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon Prime right now. It's an Amazon Prime original. This is one of those movies that we've talked about in the past, Wayne. Like you really have to be patient, I think, with this type of film. It's a movie about a man who is given a 2-day pass from prison. Him and his girlfriend have this bag of gold, and they're gonna change it in so he could pay back his debt because he owed a man debt, and that man decided to go to the police, which then sent the police sent him to jail because he couldn't pay back the debt. And
Yep.
the only person that can release him essentially is that man if he takes back what his charge. And so he's trying to pay him back, but then they decide that they find out that it's not worth as much as they thought it was. So the man decides, and then you can decide for yourself whether he did it for just because, or if he did it because he's a good person, decides to try to find who the bag of gold belonged to. He gets it back to that person while he's in jail. His sister gives it to the woman, and he becomes a hero. That's in the title, a hero. They treat him like one. So the charity that helps people get out of jail early decides to intervene and help him pay off his debt, and because he did a good deed. Um, it is a movie about a man who's kind of had shitty luck, if you believe him. Again, they never really give you 100% of the facts. I would argue it's pretty clear by the end of the movie that he's supposed to be a pretty decent person for the most part, who's just kind of been given a raw deal. That's what this movie is. It's basically about a movie, or about a movie. It's basically a movie about a guy who's just kind of had shit luck his whole life, and he's trying to do better. He's really trying to do better for his kid, who has a really serious stutter problem, which he feels bad about. In some of these other countries too, I think when people have disabilities like that, they get looked upon worse than they do in some other countries.
Yeah.
And based on just religion and rules and laws. And I was just talking to my wife, it's very interesting to see a movie take place in Iran, a modern day movie, in a modern city. They got shops, they got stores, they got restaurants. It's a modern city, but they still run on Iranian laws, which can be very different and very weird. And so to us anyway, not to them, obviously, it's their culture. This is one of those movies we talk about, like Lost Daughter, kind of like it's a really well made movie, and I actually did like this movie. But it's one of those ones I would not put it past. If someone watched it and they're like, "Oh, this is too boring for me," I get it. It's a slow burn.
The fact that they have to read is going to
Yes,
be an instant knock against it for most people. Like
yes.
someone who is dyslexic, like myself, had trouble keeping up with what was going on.
And the subtitles were quick too, so yes. I completely understand. I had a little bit of difficult time because they just kept going by so fast.
Yeah. So a lot of it was a lot of it was lost on me, so I kind of had trouble keeping up. So I didn't enjoy it as much as you did, just for the simple fact that I couldn't keep up on my end. There's nothing
and
against.
I understand. Yeah.
So
of course it does the Amazon thing too, where it's like, do you want subtitles? I'm like, well, no, it's going to have its normal subtitles. If you don't hit subtitles, it will not have subtitles, people. It started talking. I'm like, wait a minute, there's no subtitles. So you have to make sure you hit subtitles. There are supposed to be subtitles. These movies are, I think they're hard to watch because it's hard to see someone kind of go through this type of stuff, and just it's very kind of painful and emotional. And I think it's no matter where the story. The good thing about it, Wayne, I think even if you miss some of the dialogue, I think we could all relate.
The acting is good enough that you can pick up on it.
Yeah,
you can tell just by what's the reactions to the scene and how
Yeah.
the character is carrying themselves, if you will. So, I mean, that obviously helped. A well performed, well directed movie, you can kind of get by if you miss some
You can't
dialogue.
if you can't see the subtitles because they're too quick or you're dyslexic or whatever. Um, but
I'm
yeah, I mean,
American. I don't have to read to watch my movies.
it is an Iranian film, so it is in their language. I don't know what that is, so I'm not going to try to even pretend. Um, but it's definitely if you like slow burn films, it's definitely for you. You know the kind of person you are. This is not a movie for everybody. I would argue that a lot of the best international films at the Oscars are a lot like this. Could be defined as a slow or boring film. But again, it worked for me. I thought it was really well made. The acting was spot on, and everybody I
Mm-hmm.
thought did a fantastic job. It just it's an interesting film for sure, and I think if you give it a chance, I think people will like it. It's just, again, don't go into this week was kind of like the week of the boring movies, because don't go into either one of these films thinking you're going to be completely entertained like by explosions and gunfire. And they're not action films; they're both dramas, and they're both very like just low, they're tense, slow burns, and this definitely fits in well with. They both fit in well with each other. Go ahead, Wayne.
To quote Gladiator, "You will be entertained, but not in the way that you think you will."
Yes, exactly. It works out really well. I
Mm-hmm.
would give this an 8 out of 10. I thought it was really good. It just, like I said, I understand if people don't want to watch it or if they start watching it and they get bored. I completely understand.
I'm not going to give a score because, again, I can't give an accurate one because I was struggling to keep up. So
Yeah, no, I got you. Makes
I
sense.
will say that what I could comprehend and what I saw looked fantastic, and I think the acting was fine, well, above fine. It was very good. It's just there was a language and a reading barrier that I
Yes,
struggled with.
understandable. All right, so this last week, let's see. I watched Scream 3 and 4 after I watched the new Scream because I hadn't seen those in a while, so I wanted to rewatch them. Still really good. Scream 4 I still like a lot. Scream 3 I think is probably the worst, but I still really enjoyed it. It's kind of the goofiest of the bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Um Magnificent Seven, I finally finished that one. I liked it. I'm going to make a statement, though. I actually like the remake better. Now, I did see the remake first,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I felt like the original Magnificent Seven was too much. I don't really like 1950s Westerns. I'm more of a 60s, 70s guy, and then obviously modern day.
Yep.
I felt like the original Magnificent Seven was stuck between the 50s and the 70s, like the upcoming decade, that it was just like it didn't want to go too far into being an adult Western, but it didn't want to be too much like the 1950s family oriented Western. So it was kind of somewhere in the middle. It didn't have
Yeah.
enough action and violence for me per se, but I thought everybody was really good in it. I liked Steve McQueen in it and Yul Brynner and stuff like that. And great seeing a young Charles Bronson. Um, but I do think I enjoyed, just because it was more entertaining. I would say the remake with Denzel Washington, that I like that one a little more. So maybe people are going to get mad at me for that, but that's what I think. Um, I did watch Nobody again with Bob Odenkirk. I showed it to my father because he hadn't seen it before. He really liked it as well. It did. While I own it, it did actually just pop up on HBO Max. So if you haven't seen Nobody, head over to HBO Max or HBO, check it out. It's really really good. Bob
Nice.
Odenkirk as an action star. I don't think anyone thought that would be something that we would ever get, and it's a lot of fun. So definitely
Mm-hmm.
recommend checking it out. Also, Christopher Lloyd is also in it, Wayne. So I don't know. I don't think you have seen it yet. So
No, I have not. I will have to
Christopher
check that one
Lloyd
out.
plays his dad, which is amazing. So
Awesome.
definitely worth watching just for that alone. All right, what have you watched this week?
I have started watching Yellowstone.
Nice.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. It very much fills a
Just
void.
that first episode.
Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I am halfway through season 2 already. So
Nice. I like it. I
yeah.
like it.
I also watched a really interesting documentary on Jazzland, the New Orleans Six Flags amusement park that was destroyed in the Hurricane
Katrina.
Katrina,
Okay.
the floods
Yeah, the
and
floods. Yep.
the hurricane, and then the subsequent flooding that destroyed New Orleans in 2005, and how the park was abandoned. And over the years they've tried to, revive it or do something with the land, and the park's just sitting there deteriorating. And it's a very interesting documentary showing the history of it. And it was I believe it was only 3 years old when it was hit by the hurricane and
Oh
destroyed.
wow.
So yeah,
What
massive
did you watch it
losses.
on?
Amazon
Okay.
Prime.
Okay, good.
It's called
Good to know.
It's just called Jazz. If you look up Jazzland, it's very well
I'll
done.
go look it up right now and add it to my
Because
queue.
I actually came to know about the park because some like urban explorers did a video walking through it, talking about that. And it's funny because growing up in Illinois, we had Six Flags Great America.
Yep.
Up at Gurnee, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know how often you went. I went a couple times a year.
Yeah, I didn't go a lot, but I went a few times.
Yeah, but just fond memories of growing up doing that sort of thing, and then just to see, a park, it was very similar to that one, just destroyed and abandoned, and just.
I see closed for storm. Is that what it is?
That's what it is. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry,
Jazzland is what Jazzland's what the park is called, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Closed for Storm, everybody. Closed for Storm is the name of that movie. It's only 77 minutes. That's a good length, too. Nice short length.
Yes, because the sign is still up with the message "Closed for Storm."
Oh,
that's where they get that's the whole thing. And it's like
cool. Well, that's interesting. It's a nice
I do love a good documentary like that. So
for sure, yeah. I haven't watched it yet, but there's a new DMX documentary on HBO, so I will be watching that if you guys are interested in him. All right, so stuff. We got the news here, the news and releases. We're going to go through that right now.
And if we don't stop losing beloved people, I don't know what I'm going to do.
We'll get to it. It's been rough, but we'll get to it at the end here. We'll spend a little time on that. That's what I was going to talk about again. It's been a rough year so far for celebrities. All right. So news: Kendrick Lamar teams up with Trey Parker and Matt Stone to produce action comedy film at Paramount. No director has been named yet. When I read that news story, I was like, Kendrick Lamar is working with Trey Parker and Matt Stone? What? So I'm really interested to see what that is.
Yes.
Pedro Almodovar is going to make his first English language film. He's signed Cate Blanchett to star, so already off to a good start. It's called A Manual for Cleaning Women. Elizabeth Banks and Zach Galifianakis will star in the Beanie Bubble film adaptation for Apple. Sarah Snook of Succession fame and Geraldine Viswanathan will co-star. Daniel Radcliffe plays Weird Al in biopic. This is going to be interesting. I have a feeling it's going to be kind of like a joke documentary or docudrama. But it will be on
the mockumentary.
Yeah, I think so. I'm thinking of like Popstar.
It will be the one that you never knew you needed in your life.
Yes, I think so. It'll be on Roku. So if you have a Roku device, I believe that it'll be free once it's done. Nicole Silverberg, Mike Judge are making an animated series called Bad Crimes over at Netflix with Nicole Byer and Lauren Lapkus as FBI agents who travel around the country solving crimes while working on their friendship. Robert Pattinson in talks to work with Bong Joon-ho in his next movie. He's the director of Parasite. Be I believe his first English language film. Well, it's not technically, but it'll be like his first kind of American type film-ish, maybe. Anyway, not his first English language film, so I take that back. But it'll be something a little different from what I understand. Ethan Hawke joins Julia Roberts and Mahershala Ali in Netflix thriller Leave the World Behind. Godzilla Monsterverse TV series happening in Apple Plus featuring Godzilla and other titans from the movies. 9 Hulu short films produced by Disney are being turned into feature films. Joshua Jackson joins Lizzie Kaplan in Paramount Plus Fatal Attraction TV show. A Christmas Story Christmas, a sequel to A Christmas Story, is headed to HBO Max with Peter Billingsley returning as an older Ralphie. Billingsley and Vince Vaughn are producing through their company Wild West Picture Show Productions. Squid Game officially renewed for Season 2. Kirsten Dunst is working with Alex Garland on his next film. It's called Civil War, which it's a futuristic action epic. Release is coming out this year. Upload Season 2 arrives March 11th. Moon Knight premieres March 30th. They just had the debut trailer. Severance series with Adam Scott, John Turturro, Patricia Arquette, and Christopher Walken hits Apple Plus February 18th. Ben Stiller produces and directs on the project. Our Flag Means Death, starring Rhys Darby, Leslie Jones, and Taika Waititi as Blackbeard the Pirate, lands on HBO Max this March. Picard Season 2 arrives March 3rd on Paramount Plus. Nightmare Alley will be streaming on HBO Max and Hulu February 1st. That's the new Guillermo del Toro film. So instead of going like straight to digital, it'll probably be on digital by the end of this month. It'll go to HBO Max and Hulu very quickly, as well as The Kingsman 2. That's February 18th for that one. Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, debuts on Amazon Prime September 2nd. That is the giant Amazon Lord of the Rings prequel series epic that they've been working on. So it's exciting to see where that's going to end up.
I really hope that succeeds because they put so much money into it. So I'm hoping.
Yes, it's going to be like one of the most expensive TV shows of all time. So deaths this week, we've had quite a few. I was actually it was like Tuesday or Wednesday, Wayne, and I was like, wow, there really hasn't been that many. And I swear to God, there were like 4 in that day as I was scrolling through Facebook. It was Gaspard Ulliel died in a skiing accident, dead at 37. He's known for Hannibal Rising, Saint Laurent, and will posthumously be seen in Moon Knight as Midnight Man. So he was only 37 years old. Very crazy. Yvette Mimou, the original Time Machine actress, dead at 80. Andre Leon Talley, who is a fashion icon and had a documentary about him, dead at 73. Marty Roberts, a lounge singer, part of Marty and Elaine. They were featured in Swingers. He's dead at 89. And then the 2 big ones happened at the end of the week. Meatloaf, dead at 74 from COVID. And Louis Anderson, dead at 68 from blood cancer. Louis Anderson, I've always been a fan of his since his kid cartoon TV show in the 90s when we were kids, Wayne. Big fan of him, big fan of his comedy. So that one hit, and I was like, wow.
Loved him in Coming to America.
Oh, he was great in Coming to America. He was in the sequel, too. Louis was that guy that he's been a comedian for a long time. I think he had the respect of a lot of comedians. So it really is just kind of a sad time, especially for comedians this year so far, Bob Saget and him passing away. And that Meatloaf, I mean, he was 74, he had COVID. I'm not sure if he was vaxxed or not, but he was, for a while, one of the biggest rock stars of all time. Yep. Everybody knew him from Rocky Horror Picture Show. The Bad Out of Hell, the first one, is still one of the greatest selling albums of all time. So, I mean, he obviously left his mark on history. But, it does kind of shine a light on COVID. And, COVID is real, and people die from it. And Meatloaf died from it. Yep. I'm pretty sure he wasn't vaccinated, so it just shows you, again, the importance of vaccines. I don't want to turn this into one of those things, but it just is what it is. When you have someone who dies like that, it kind of, again, it just shines a light on it. It's like, oh, here we are. But yeah, I mean, he was, a great musician. He was a really fun actor. There's this movie called Stage Fright from 2013 or something like that he's in. That's really good. A horror musical, which he's known for. So
his name was Robert Paulson.
Yes, exactly. Obviously, if you've seen everybody putting his name is and whatever his actual name is, because he's only been reported as Meatloaf being dead, but Meatloaf was not his real name, obviously. I do love when people refer to him as Meat. I was talking to Meat today. Okay. Tell Mr. Loaf I said hello. Yeah, so, again, like we said, it's been, for celebrities this year, it has not been good. We just started. So, if you're a celebrity, maybe lock yourself inside a closet. I don't know. But yeah, so that's our show for this week, everybody. We appreciate you listening, obviously. We hope you tune in next week for whatever we're going to talk about next week. It's going to be another fun-filled show with new movies to review, and again, we just always enjoy doing this. So thank you again for listening to Now Showing with Mike and Wayne.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
Hasta la vista,
baby.
Hey, everybody, we're all gonna get laid.